You have a new study, new research out that is incredibly fascinating, looking at thousands of young people, teenagers between the ages of 14 and 17. And this research looks at an intersection. It deals with religion, spirituality, social media use, and mental health. What was it that motivated you researching this, getting into this topic?
We've researched spiritual formation for about 15 years, and not all the practices, but actually how someone becomes spiritually formed. And probably the last 10 years, we've been very concerned about youth, young people walking away. And then our concern about the algorithms and social media. And we just thought, why don't we do a study? Because a lot of people have suggested that there's a problem with social media and the algorithms and all that. But why don't we do a study and take a look at, instead of just blaming TikTok or something like that, let's look at some variables such as social media usage, this mental health crisis in the US, especially with the over 50% of middle school and high school girls feeling hopeless and depressed. And then this spirituality, this move away from anything religious. So we did the study in the U.S. and we're absolutely shocked when we started gathering the data about their struggles, their spiritual struggles, their mental health, and then it just progressed. From there, we threw in the 9 other countries because we were doing some other research for the teens, and boom, first study of its kind.
And I want to get into the findings. What was the most shocking finding, though? You said as you got into it, it was really pretty stunning. You expanded that to other countries. What was the thing that stood out to you the most?
How strong the destructive behavior becomes when you start combining variables to see, and you can almost build an assessment that predicts where a kid's gonna head up. And with all of this suicide of kids with all these issues, and then you've got these mass killings on, I think the average shooter's age on campus is 16. What if we could develop a assessment that could identify at-risk kids for either harming themselves or harming someone else? So uh,
Yeah, it's interesting looking at, the results, the fact that the US and the UK in those countries, destructive thoughts and loneliness were more common. Do you have any thoughts on why that is the case in those countries?
I have a few thoughts. It may have to do with this transgender and sexual confusion that the U.S. is going through. Uh, UK has already been through it, and it is kind of maybe reaping the consequences. So we're headed in. UK is kind of making some sense out of, maybe it's not so good to do these surgeries before somebody turns of age. And so I think we just picked up, like, wow. And they're significant, if you look at those graphs, they're way off the charts compared to everybody else. It's bizarre.
Yeah, well, and you go in and you start to look at these issues. The thing that people in America have warned about, and this is complicated. It gets really interesting when you start talking about countries, like Norway and other countries where they've sort of moved away from God, but they claim to be so happy. But when you look at America, a country that has traditionally had these Judeo-Christian values that have underpinned everything, where belief has been very high, we're starting to watch these rates, these declines happen in America, not just nominally, but even actions, not going to church as much. I mean, this is something we've known for a long time, and we've been warning a lot of people, this is not good. This is not good for culture. It's not good for individuals. You actually found that the rates of destructive thoughts were more common among teenagers who expressed that they didn't believe in anything spiritual. Can you speak about some of those results? Because that seems to verify the fear and the worry that people have had on this issue.
Oh yeah. The further away they get from Jesus, the more lost they are. There's no basis then for anything. Nothing really makes sense. They become much more confused. I think one of the problems is, especially for in the U.S., I think it's the highest percentage where teens still know that in order to be saved, you have to believe in Jesus Christ and be saved by grace. So you have that, and yet they reject it. So then they start thinking, well, then there's no sin. I can do whatever I want, and they start heading down a road that before long they get in. And on the other side of it, the church is having a tremendous problem with handling all of this. And what we're seeing the church do is throw the Bible at these kids, and that's not a solution either. So it's tough.
Yeah, I mean, the idea that you move away, and you saw this statistically, I would imagine, in this study, that the more you moved away from spirituality and truth and a belief in something bigger, the more you had these struggles, right? So
Right.
that to me again verifies that fear that people have had. And you mentioned on the other side, churches being equipped to actually deal with this. That's another issue that is complex and that adds other layers to this. How did social media come into play? Because that is something a lot of parents are struggling with. Their kids want to be on it. Some people are just no holds bar. Go ahead. Here's the iPad. Have fun on TikTok. What did you find in your research?
So we've had a concern with the algorithms that lead people down a path that is very concerning. One of my things is, if you think you're raising your kids, um, you're probably not having nearly as much of an influence in relation to how long they spend in social media. There's a Christian psychologist who says if your kids are on social media all the time, you've lost them. In the church, they've stopped listening to you. So have your kids stop doing social media. What we're saying is your kids aren't going to stop. I mean that's, and especially the older they get. So our thing is, let's get people spiritually fit. Let's develop things that they can do during the day, so when they get sucked into some of these negative things, that they know how to deal with it instead of walking away and chucking it all. If that makes sense.
It does. I mean, when you look at all of this, you look at the Center for Bible Engagement, what you're doing with this research, what is your hope? This is, as you said, this is the first of its kind, this research. What is your hope for the impact of it?
So we're building a spiritual fitness platform and app. So you have the assessment, so you can predict, and then in the spiritual fitness app, based on where you are spiritually, we suggest daily content. So that's coming out next year. But so there's a lot of research behind it. Kids consume a lot of media, so you got to be very uh, robust in your solutions, because kids demand a lot.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And where can people go to find out more about your organization and the work you're doing?
Backtothebible.org is a great place to start.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time, taking us through this research. It's incredibly important. I think we're going to see a lot more coming on this from you guys and also from others. It's a big issue. It's an important one, and we appreciate your time.
Well, thank you so much, Billy, and thank you for having me.